Here at Henry Beaufort we sent some of our reporters out into the field at Marwell Zoo.
Let's see how they got on interviewing Dr. Phil, Head of Conservation.
Here we are at Marwell Zoo from Henry Beaufort and we're interviewing Dr. Phil from Conservation.
Thank you.
So what is this conservation work that you do here at Marwell Zoo?
Well, in Marwell, we've for many years been focused on the protection of endangered species. And as a zoo, we're very much involved with the reintroduction of animals back to the wild, where they've gone extinct. But we're also very interested in sort of work many years on practical conservation actions for endangered species in the wild. And we work in many countries, mostly in Africa, in Kenya, Zimbabwe, and also North Africa and Tunisia. But increasingly we're working elsewhere in the world on other conservation projects, including the snow leopard in China most recently.
Why is conservation so important?
Well, as humans, we rely on the natural world around us. We get our food from it, we get the air we breathe, we get the water we drink. And we've also had a major impact on the environments which have caused problems, and the environment is becoming degraded. And this causes problems for ourselves because those things we rely on become scarce. But it also causes problems for those wildlife species we're interested in. And generally, the environment is based on the biodiversity that exists within it. So all of the animals, the plants, the microbes that exist in the environment have a vital role to play in maintaining ecosystems, which we then will come to rely on even more in the future. So this is why it's important.
Is the snow leopard the most endangered species here, and what are you doing to help it?
Well, the snow leopard isn't probably the most endangered species in the wild. There are certainly few of them remaining, and the numbers are almost certainly declining. The work that we're doing on the snow leopard is really trying to understand some of the basic biology of where they are in the wild. And they exist in vast mountain ranges of Central Asia. And the first job is just to try and find them, to understand where they are, how many there are, and then understand the threats that they face. And the threats they face come from human activities such as livestock herding, habitat degradation, global warming is an increasing problem. And so the actions we're putting is working with governments within the countries that they exist to develop action plans where they can put management in place which will reduce some of these impacts, maybe managing livestock more differently, reducing livestock in some areas, but also putting in measures that will help to restore some of the habitats that the snow leopards rely on. Within Marwell, the most endangered species we have is probably the scimitar-horned oryx, which are over there. Up until the end of last year, this species was entirely extinct in the wild, and working with partners in the Sahara Conservation Fund and others, we've restored the population of scimitar-horned oryx into Chad, which is a country in North Africa, and we have populations now in Tunisia as part of our work, which are set to become additional wild animals. And so these species are now a great example of conservation working where zoos such as us and others are able to restore these animals to their former glory.
How long have you been doing this conservation work for?
Conservation work, well, when I first started, conservation hadn't really been invented. I started my working life as an ecologist, and so I was working in Africa, looking to understand the interactions between species, particularly predators, the mammalian predators, big cats, little cats, other things like that. And so during that time when I was doing it, it became increasingly apparent that many of the wildlife species we were looking at were becoming endangered, and there was increasing need to put measures in to protect them. And so, ecologists such as me turned into conservationists. But I've been doing this for more years than I care to remember.
How hard is it to bring back an animal from the brink of extinction?
It depends on the animal, but in truth it's very hard. So the scimitar-horned oryx, as an example, is a concerted effort by a number of governments, a number of organisations, a huge amount of investment, a lot of money being put into it, time and effort. And so, and this is work that's been going on for 5 years just to get to the point of putting 25 animals back into the wild. And so this is why we're really highlighting the need to step in and create options for these species before they get to that point. If they've already gone extinct, then we're fighting a very difficult battle. Where species are on the verge of extinction, then we need to identify what are the actions that can be taken quickly, but we have to get the support of people to do that. We have to get the support of the local communities that live with those animals, but we also need the support of their governments to make these things happen, and that can sometimes be a hard job.
What inspired you to be a conservationist?
I've just always loved animals since, as a child, just sort of, wanted to go to zoos, museums, having pets, going into the woods around my parents' home and just finding creatures and bringing them home. I've just been a natural historian for my entire life. So the options that I was looking at when I was at school, becoming a vet or a zookeeper or some way to work with animals. And to be honest, at that time, the sort of work I do now, I wasn't aware that it existed. If I could have created my dream job when I was your age, it would be doing what I'm doing now. So I'm incredibly fortunate. And it's just all I've ever done is just choose the options that I've seen as being the most enjoyable, the ones I found most interesting. And it's got me to this point, fortunately.
Do you travel a lot in your job? If so, where?
I do travel quite a lot, and I get to, I'm again incredibly fortunate, I get to see some incredible places. So often I'll try and get to some of our field sites and work with our field teams and just out of my own pure personal curiosity, or sometimes I can add some support and help to the work they're doing. And so I do a lot of travel in Africa, particularly the countries I mentioned, Kenya, Zimbabwe, and in North Africa. But I also get to go to, meet with governments and other organisations that are concerned with conservation and develop work together and look at joint action. And so, for example, next week I'll be in Prague, in the Czech Republic. After that, I'm then going to be in Kenya, and then shortly after that, I'll be in China. And all of those are going to be very different trips, looking at either field work or working with other organisations to develop the conservation work.
If it was possible, what extinct animal would you bring back and why?
Oh, what a great question. Thylacine. Do you know the thylacine? This was a marsupial wolf, which lived in Australia. And again, sort of the last example in the zoo was filmed actually, one of the first pieces of early filmmaking in the sort of early 20th century. And this animal then went extinct, and that was the last one. And it's, I just think, a fascinating animal. In Australia you have species which have evolved completely separately to other species around the world. And marsupials occur just in Australia, or Australasia and New Zealand as well, and South America. And they have a very separate life form and sort of life histories. And so I would love to see one of those.
If you wanted to combine two animals to make a new species, what animals would they be?
Yeah, I to be honest, I think at the moment there's a lot of attention being given to new genetic technologies that are possible. From cloning sheep and cloning many other animals to combining the genetics of different species. I'm old-fashioned in that I like the way that nature and natural evolution has progressed, and the species that have evolved on this planet have evolved with very particular adaptations to their environment. And so I think I wouldn't seek to interfere, but I have to say I do like sharks, so something with sharks involved is probably going to hit a mark if I could.
What's your favourite animal?
Right, well, thank you for asking that question. As I say, I find sharks absolutely fascinating as these prehistoric exemplars of a perfect functioning animal. They've adapted and evolved, to a point where there's very little improvement can be made, apart, of course, from the fact that they're now being hunted and persecuted by people, and that's happening at a faster rate than they're going to be able to adapt to. But I think, so I do like them, but I also really like big cats. And I've worked on big cats for a number of years, and I think the snow leopards that are just over there, and I've been working on snow leopards now for over 10 years, so I think I'm going to have to put up for them.
Thank you for watching and back to the studio.
How interesting. Let's see how our interviewers got on at the Tropics Centre.
Here we are at Tropical interviewing one of the keepers, Dan. So Dan, why do you keep it at such a high temperature?
Because the animals that live in there live in the tropical areas of the world.
What animals do you work with?
We work with the reptiles, the amphibians, the fish and all the invertebrates, which includes all your insects and spiders.
If you had to be an animal in there, what animal would you be and why?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. Probably the pacu, because I have no idea why.
Why is it
Pacu is a very large fish that comes from South America.
What tips would you give people to work in the area?
They need to learn about the animals in advance, have an interest, and just be dedicated to that throughout their career.
Have you ever fed an animal something really disgusting?
Yeah, most days we do that. So we use different insects or sometimes rats and mice and things like that to feed to the snakes. So it's not normally very pleasant food that you want to eat yourself.
What's the worst animal case you have to clean?
The ants can be quite tricky, I suppose, because when you're taking all their food out, they tend to climb up your arm and stuff, and sometimes you end up with one down your shirt. And they bite, so that's not too pleasant.
Do you ever feel nervous when working with animals? So do you ever feel nervous with the animals you work with?
No, I'm not nervous, but you've always got to show respect, and some of the animals we do have are quite dangerous, so you just want to make sure that you know where the animals are and how they behave, and like I say, you just respect the animal and you won't get hurt.
If you were reincarnated as an animal, what would you be and why?
Probably a killer whale, because nothing's going to eat me.
What is your favourite animal?
Probably the pacu again, which is a big fish. They're very cool because in the wild, nuts that drop into the river, the pacu eat the nuts and they crush them with these big teeth that they have that look like human teeth. They're very weird for a fish.
What do you say with the animals you're working with when people are hunting them? Like, what do you how do you feel about it?
Well, it depends in what context the hunting is. In some societies they hunt for subsistence to feed themselves, but sometimes the hunting is actually for the pet trade, or it's commercial killing, and sometimes that's on an unsustainable scale. So generally, I don't agree with hunting. Obviously, in some situations, you understand why people would do it.
How do you feel about the animals being in captivity?
Oh, that's a good question. In an ideal world, you wouldn't have any animals in captivity, but unfortunately we don't live in an ideal world, and the work that we do with the captive animals actually has long-reaching benefits for the wild populations and also people as well. A lot of people won't get to travel to countries to see these animals, they get to see them here at Marwell.
Have you ever had trouble with any of the animals in there? Like, have they escaped?
The ants regularly escape, but that's normally due to our fault. If a branch snaps over or something, they all climb out. Well, not all of them, but quite a few. But generally, no, the animals stay within their enclosures. That's what we try to do.
What's your daily routine for working at the tropical one?
Yeah, so we start work at 8 o'clock, and then the first thing you normally do in the morning is you walk around the section that you're working on to check all the animals, make sure everything's okay, all your heating and lighting is working, and then you start working your way around the enclosures, cleaning them out, feeding the animals, cleaning the pools, changing water bowls, that sort of thing. And normally that takes quite a large proportion of the morning to do that.
Thank you for the interview and back to the studio.
Escaping ants, what a nightmare.
Let's head over to the rhino enclosure where our reporters are interviewing zookeeper Dan.
Today we're at the rhino enclosure with Darren.
Yeah.
What's your job? My job, I look after a range of animals on the livestock section, so the rhinos behind us, also the giraffe, buffalo, zebras, basically anything that's quite large with hooves, what I look after.
Do you name your animals, and if you do, why?
Yeah, we do name our animals. It's kind of to give them a bit more of an individual identity, and it just helps us to then kind of keep an eye on them and make sure we know who we're looking after.
How do you decide on the names?
As a team, we kind of come up with a list of names. Generally, there's like a theme. So these guys obviously come from Africa, so we're trying to come up with an African name. Generally, to do a meaning. So with Pembe, she's got a pink birthmark under her arm, and Pembe is pink in African.
What made you want to work with rhinos?
Well, they're pretty cool. They're quite an iconic animal. Not many people get to work with them. You'd be lucky to see them in the wild, and I get to work with them every day.
What is your favourite animal?
My favourite animal would probably be the rhinos or the giraffe.
What tips would you give people who want to work with animals?
Work hard at school, and then try and get some sort of animal qualification. Volunteer in any way you can that works with animals, and yeah, just keep trying. It's quite tough to get into the animal industry, so just keep trying, keep pestering zoos if you want to work in a zoo.
What inspired you to work with animals?
Since I was little, I've always had a passion for animals. I just find them fascinating.
How do you feel about the animals being in captivity?
Obviously, in an ideal world, they wouldn't be in captivity, and there'd be no zoos because there wouldn't be any trouble in the wild. But with the rhinos, these guys in the wild, they're actually endangered because of poaching. Quite a lot of animals need zoos to help them basically keep the population alive. So we are here to help them. So in that respect, zoos are a very good thing.
How do you get animals, or especially the larger animals, into the cages?
With the rhinos, they came in really big crates. So basically it's a massive crane and a really big heavy duty crate, and they're basically parked at the back of the house, and then we move them in carefully. Or obviously if they're born here, it's a lot easier. And then just on a day-to-day basis, these guys are quite good at recognising their names. So if they're out in the field and we want to call them back in, just shout the names, they'll start wandering back in.
Thank you very much, and thank you for watching. Now back to the studio.
Here we have it, a life as a zookeeper at Marwell Zoo.
How about you visit them soon and see for yourself how wonderful Marwell Zoo is?